Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our next in our AI series. Today we have Sean Griffin, and Sean is a former U.S. Department of Justice trial attorney who counsels businesses in Maryland, Washington, and Virginia. He graduated from Harvard College with honors and from Columbia Law School. Among other things, Sean handles matters involving contract disputes, employment claims, and government contracting at the state and federal level. For the past 20 years, he has helped clients address cybersecurity and privacy issues, including the safe and effective use of AI. Sean is certified by the International Association of Privacy Professionals as a certified information privacy professional and an artificial intelligence governance professional. And Sean joins us from Longman and Van Grack Law Firm. Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Margie. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. Special good morning to my partner, Adam Van Grack, who is here with us today. Thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate you all waking up early and getting your coffee and joining me to talk about artificial intelligence. So let us get started. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. And can everybody see my screen? Yes, perfect. Okay. And so we're here to talk about how you and your business can use AI and how you should not use AI and how to basically maximize your use of artificial intelligence in your business. A few words about me. As Margie said, I graduated from Harvard College. I'm sorry, this is embarrassing. They have some picture of some middle-aged guy there. It's kind of paunchy instead of me. Let me see if I can get a more accurate picture. There we go. That's perfect. So I graduated from Harvard College, Columbia Law School. I've been doing business litigation for 30 years. And for the past 22 or so years, I've been doing cybersecurity. Back when I started, cybersecurity wasn't a thing. They called it information security. And I basically managed electronic documents and computer security and data security and data security investigations, that sort of thing. And eventually, computers and smartphones became widespread, and my practice sort of transitioned into general cybersecurity practice. So about two-thirds of my business is business litigation. Another one-third is cybersecurity AI. And as Margie mentioned, I'm a certified privacy professional and a certified AI professional as well. But enough about me. Let's talk about AI. And just to take a 30,000-foot view, we have the AI. And AI, like everything else in life, has pros and cons. It can be more accurate. We'll get to that in a bit. It can be proactive. It can actually help you out. There's new standards in agentic AI that can actually be a lot more active in helping your business, helping you do what you want to do. It can be cheaper. ChatGPT, it can be either free or cost $20 a month. They have a $200 a month version. But if that does the work of, somebody else you'd have to hire doing that, well, that's still cheaper than hiring an employee to do some of the things that AI can do. And AI can also learn continuously. It does what is called machine learning, which is basically what it sounds like. The computer can basically use data to train itself and improve its outputs as it goes forward. And machine learning is a very hot topic nowadays, the pros and cons of machine learning. I won't get too technical here, but I just want to make sure that you've heard the term. However, like anything else, AI has its potential disadvantages and can be potentially inaccurate in kind of bizarre ways. We'll talk about that. If you use chatbots to talk to your customers, a lot of customers don't like that. And also, AI can be biased. We'll talk about bias in a little bit, but I'm talking not generally about bias in terms of employment discrimination, but bias in terms of it tends toward certain outcomes that it's used to and tends away from other outcomes. So in many ways, it's kind of human in that respect. And we'll talk about how AI can be biased and how to prevent against that as we go forward. I want to talk about some ways in which AI can help your supply chain issues. And I would say too, I forgot to mention earlier, if you have a question, put it in the chat, and I'll try to answer it, or Margie will alert me to a question in the chat, and then I can just answer it as we go along. I've been giving this presentation a lot, so whatever question you ask is not going to throw me at all. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to reach out to me after the presentation, happy to talk then too. But if you your business experiencing supply chain issues, AI can help with that a lot. A lot of businesses are experiencing supply chain issues since the pandemic. Those supply chain issues remain, and AI can help with that. It can help enhance supply chain visibility. They can sort of track where the things are in your supply chain as you send them out to your customers. It can let you know where everything is. Um, it can compile raw data from invoices, product orders, custom declarations, what have you, and let you know where everything is if something is held up, and then maybe what to do about it. And that way you track your inventory as your goods move through the supply chain. AI could also predict sales and revenue based on historical data going forward, and it can even predict demand fluctuations, which you can use to optimize inventory levels. If you know demand is going to go up and down for your product or your services, it's be good to know that in advance. And AI is actually pretty good at picking up patterns. It's actually excellent at picking up patterns that humans may not recognize, and you can use those patterns to enhance your business. Maybe your supply chain is your biggest issue, but you probably have issues regarding HR. I mean, human resources takes a lot of time for any company of a certain size, and AI can be used in that. The primary ways companies use AI in the human resources conduct is what's called chatbots. And you've seen chatbots as you sign into a website. It says, "Hi, I'm Robbie the robot. Can I answer whatever questions you have?" If you like me, you click them away. But what you could do is deploy a chatbot for your employees, and you could train that chatbot on your manuals, your employment manuals, your whatever manuals you have in terms of how to operate your business. And then you can enable your employees to ask the chatbot questions about your business practices. Some examples, people often have questions about vacation leave, parental leave. How much vacation leave do I have? How much parental leave do I have? It's easy enough to get a chatbot that can answer those questions. They sell those on the open market. The insurance, they answer insurance questions as well. You can upload the policies and you can interrogate the chatbot as to whatever policies you have, and the chatbot can answer questions, express reports, what have you. And this way, it sort of relieves the HR staff of having to answer kind of rote questions for everybody. Instead, you can offload that to the AI HR chatbot, and then your HR people are free to do something else with their time, the more knotty matters that they have to work on. AI is often used in business communications. You could use it to write emails. You could use it to revise emails. You could change the tone, make the email longer or shorter, what have you. Also, it's really good at summarizing documents. If you have either a lot of documents that you want AI to summarize, it's very good at doing that. Um, and even if one document you want to shorten, I'll show you an example of that going forward. It's very good at doing that as well. Somebody's asked an excellent question, which just disappeared from my chat. Hold on. But it was an excellent question. If it's asked a real question but gets something wrong, sells wrong health insurance info, what liability does that bring to the company? That is an excellent question. You need to really focus on that going forward. And the short answer is you want to make sure that the AI is reliable enough to answer those questions. Like, there's only so much liability you're going to have if somebody takes, 5 vacation days instead of 4. Maybe you just say, oh, well. And the reason why I focused on having the only internal facing AI as opposed to external facing AI facing your customers, is because there's only so much they can do in terms of your company. Because your company could say, okay, here's a health insurance question, and a lot of it you're going to pawn off to the actual health insurance provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or what have you. You yourself don't have to take that liability. It's just going to repeat what's in the employment manual. But I would recommend, and I'm previewing later on in my presentation, I would strongly recommend saying to your employees, listen, if this is a really big deal to you, make sure you double check that. But this is just going to give you the quick answer going forward. And if the AI is good enough, it can say, well, you'll find this answer on page 42 of the employment manual, or what have you, or go to this page on the Blue Cross Blue Shield website if it's really sophisticated, and they can sort of check it for themselves. So your liability is limited, and you want to keep it limited by putting appropriate safeguards into your AI system. Going back to hold on. Okay. So it's very good at summarizing documents as well. Using AI in marketing. This is one of my favorite uses of AI because if you have to handle your own marketing, it's oftentimes, your actual work gets in the way of your marketing a lot of the times. And everybody will tell you, well, you got to do concentrate on marketing. At least 50% of your time should be on marketing, people say. And I say, well, I don't have that many hours in a day. But with AI, you can. You can draft flyers. Some AI can identify potential clients. If you use the right program, you can say, well, have you used this? Have you looked here or there for potential clients who might want your goods or services? You could track customer usage and satisfaction using AI can, bring forth to you different insights that you might not have caught on to yourself. And that is because, again, AI is excellent at recognizing patterns that humans don't recognize. And you could use it to draft social media posts. It's great at that because AI is trained on a lot of social media data, so it could write a social media post. That's for good or ill, as we'll see in a little bit. Um, what can AI not do? And one thing I want to hit on, and the question already sort of touched on this, AI cannot answer questions reliably. And that's because it is not a search engine. Now, I wrote this a while ago before Google decided to use AI in its search engine. And now Google's AI has become somewhat less reliable. I think there have been several examples of Google giving wrong answers. You probably heard of Google advising people to eat 2 or 3 rocks per day to maintain their minerals in their system. It also told people that the best way to attach cheese to your pizza is to glue it on. And most recently, my favorite example was somebody asked whether the swimming pool of the Titanic was filled with water. And Google's AI helpfully said, well, no, the engineers drained it when they discovered the ship was sinking to make the ship more buoyant. So the swimming pools in the Titanic do not have any water in them right now. I'm pretty sure that's wrong, but people have been making fun of that for a while. And why does this happen? Is because AI like ChatGPT, like the Google's AI, like the generative AI that you think of nowadays when you think of AI, is just what they call a large language model. What does a large language model do? Basically, long story short, all it does is predict the next word in the sentence, right? And so that is basically what it's doing. It's a little bit of a parlor trick. And so that because it's trained on so much writing, eventually it got pretty good at predicting what the next word in the sentence ought to sound like. And it can repeat that to you. So it's pretty decent at writing, especially given how quickly it goes. But this is important, it's not at all concerned with accuracy. I would describe AI as a young, talented, impressionable child that is, it's very talented, it sort of tells you what you want to hear, but it's not very good at being accurate, and it is very good at imitating you, even though if you don't want it to. The example I use is one of the more devastating things I had to witness was when my wife asked my older son, who was about 4 at the time, to imitate me while I watched the Green Bay Packers game. This was when Brett Favre was playing for the Packers, which means I had to watch a lot of interceptions. And my son Carter decided to imitate me as I watched Brett Favre throw an interception. Let me tell you, he was excellent at it. He did a fantastic job. It really, really caused me to look in the mirror and wonder what exactly I was doing to my child. But it was accurate. I didn't have to give him that much. But if you understand AI as something that can kind of imitate what you do, but doesn't really care that much about accuracy, you'll go very far. And the example like to use to illustrate this is C3PO. The fact that I use this example tells you a lot about how much of a nerd I am. I make no apologies. But if you are of a certain age, you'll remember C3PO advising Han Solo that the odds of successfully navigating an asteroid belt are 3,720 to 1. And Han Solo responds, never tell me the odds. Well, when I saw this as a 12-year-old child, I said, well, why doesn't Han Solo want to know the odds? It seems like it would be useful information. As a matter of fact, in the Star Wars movie, people generally sort of dismiss whatever advice C3PO has to give them. They don't want to hear it. Why not? Because C3PO is often wrong. He is a protocol droid. That is, he is a large language model. He knows what he's supposed to say in any particular situation, but he doesn't really understand what it is, and he doesn't care that it's accurate. He just says things just to say things a lot of the time. And sure enough, if you go look at C3PO was entirely wrong. The odds of surviving an asteroid belt apparently about 1 in a billion, according to the PhDs and those who study these things. So don't rely on ChatGPT or any of these other things to give you the correct answer unless you specifically trained it how to do so. And I'll talk about how to do that later on. Why can generative AI be wrong? There are a lot of reasonings, and one I want to focus on is data poisoning. And I'm using this in a very broad sense. It can be either intentional or unintentional. Unintentionally, ChatGPT is trained on, or any generative AI is trained on as much data as it can get about the entire internet. And if you've been on the internet recently, you recognize that the internet is a wretched hive of scum and villainy. You get a lot of bad things. You get a lot of good things too, but a lot of bad things. And so you sort of end up, evening everything out. The reason why Google was telling people to glue cheese to their pizza was because somebody that made a joke about that in Reddit. It said to eat 2 or 3 rocks per day because somebody, I think it was reading an article by The Onion, and the AI did not recognize it was satire. And so that's basically how it learns. It sucks in everything in the internet, but it doesn't have any way of determining whether what it says is true or false. It just says it and it will repeat it to you. Data poisoning can also be intentional. Bad actors can insert bad data into ChatGPT, whatever other model you have, Claude, what have you, and get it to spit out wrong answers or false answers. And that will throw off the data you get too. So it'll be inaccurate in that way. Also, chatbots can be manipulated. Here we have one famous example of where a couple of people realized that when they interacted with the chatbots for their car dealerships, that they were talking to an AI, and they said, "Well, you know what I can do?" They said they tricked the chatbot into offering them a Chevy for $1, and then they trained the chatbot to say, "This is a binding deal, no takesy backsies." It said that was the exact word, no takesy backsies. And so they had a lot of fun with that and embarrassed a lot of car dealerships plus the AI platform. But that was happening not just at one car dealership, but at car dealerships around the country. And the company that provided that AI had to take it down and fix it. But AI can generally be inaccurate in other ways. For a presentation, I asked Google's AI to go through my photos and find a picture of me wearing a blue suit. And here are the pictures it came up with. You'll see a couple pictures of me wearing a blue suit, but then you see other people who are not me, not wearing blue suits. I want to draw attention to this person in particular, who is not me and also not wearing a blue suit. I'd like to identify that as the same young man who was making fun of me watching the Packers game several years before this picture was taken. But somehow Google thinks he and I are exactly the same person and gave his picture as my picture. I went to the second page. Again, more pictures of not me, including this GQ model. I'm actually not too mad about this one. I mean, if I'm going to be mistaken for somebody, I'd like it to be a GQ model. That's not the worst thing in the world, but still, it's not me. I went to the third page. I found there's a picture of me not wearing a blue suit at all. There's Carter again. I don't know why he pops up so much, but the one I draw attention to is one my good friend, Lynn Ingram, who is not me not wearing a blue suit at all. So it's going entirely off the rails in terms of finding pictures of me in a blue suit. And luckily, I'm watching this and I didn't actually substitute Lynn for me, but it's the sort of thing that AI can do if you're not watching it. However, you recall that I said earlier that AI can help you answer questions. How could it do that if it's so inaccurate? Well, it does this in a variety of ways. And one example I wanted to give you is Perplexity AI. Perplexity is not a client or anything, but a lot of times if I have a question that I really want to make sure I'm right about, and for one reason or another, I don't go on Lexis or some other search engine that's specifically capable of that because it's not maybe not a legal question, I use Perplexity AI. And what makes Perplexity better than even Google at this stage of the game is it gives you footnotes. It tells you, the answer to your question, and then it gives you a little footnote that you can click on and go to the website to double check to make sure that it's giving you the right information. A lot of times it is not. I mean, I would not rely on it for legal advice, for example, because it has no capability to separate nuance and distinguish one situation from another, like the attorney can, like a real person can. But in terms of getting you started on a question, something tricky or something you just might not know about, it's pretty good because you can double check it. And double checking things is very important when you're using AI. Going back to the example, ask a question about, well, what if you give the wrong answer? Well, one thing you're going to do is tell the person double check the advice. You would have people in the HR department occasionally pinging the AI with questions and see if it gives the right answer, making sure that it's staying on point, making sure that the machine learning that the AI is engaged in is not drifting away from the answers that you want to give. Now, it happens a lot. Another thing AI cannot do is keep you out of legal trouble. You may have recognized that one of the examples I did not use in terms of using AI is one of AI's most predominant uses, and that is in reviewing resumes. A lot of companies use AI to review resumes, and what they do is um, they use AI, they scan the resumes to see if it's a good fit or not, and then the AI will either knock the resume out or will say come in for an interview. And that's problematic because AI picks up what you do and it can sort of impose and perpetuate biases. My favorite example was Amazon was using AI to review resumes as to people who should get promoted. And it was going along pretty well. Everybody was pretty happy. Then they stopped the project and looked at what was happening. And they found that two characteristics predominated in terms of people that the AI really, really pushed for promotion. And one was if your first name was Jared, and the other name is you played lacrosse. So if you're a guy who named Jared and you played lacrosse, you were on the fast track promotion at Amazon using this AI. If you weren't, you weren't. Well, why is that? You looked and see, well, if you, one, Amazon had a problem favoring men over women. And so it would favor, men named Jared because Jared is a man's name over women. Lacrosse means you grew up in a certain socioeconomic status, which, helps you a lot on Amazon. So it would bump you up there too, or you grew up in a certain neighborhood. But AI took it a step further, and so it started downgrading people who went to women's colleges, i.e., women. Why? Because if you went to a women's college, you're probably not named Jared, so he could just push you up to the side that way. And the same if you didn't play lacrosse. And that's unintentional, but all AI was doing was looking at the people Amazon intended to promote anyway. And then it kept promoting those types of people, which, maybe what you want, but maybe the exact opposite of what you want. And a few people have been sued by the FTC, the EEOC, U.S. Attorney's Office for employment discrimination. They've also faced private lawsuits. There's a big one out in California involving workplace, where in workplace was using the AI to scan resumes, and they got hit with an age and race discrimination suit because they said the AI was discriminated against us. And the court has ruled so far that the fact that the AI did it and not an actual human is not a defense at all. It is just the same as if you had an agent that was going out and doing some unlawful discrimination. You're just as much on the hook. A lot of companies have had to pay fairly substantial settlements based on these AI discrimination lawsuits. These suits are just in their infancy. You'll probably see more and more of them because the use of AI to review resumes is extraordinarily widespread. Also, it goes it's worth noting that a lot of employees, a lot of candidates also use AI to draft their employment letters, their resumes, or whatnot. So you have AI fighting AI in a certain respect, which I'm not sure that's the highest and best use of anybody's time. But be that as it may, I would use a caution if you're using AI to scan resumes. The story that AI tells about itself is sort of an omniscient robot, like Hal, but a good Hal that knows everything, sees everything. This is a picture of when I asked AI to describe how it works, how generative AI works. And you see, AI has a really high opinion of itself. It's a luminous orb that symbolizes the AI's core algorithm and diverse outputs. Just really what a beautiful, beautiful picture it drew of itself. Really very conceited, but here's more of how what AI really is. As I said, it's a sort of small robot that you need to train, and specifically, you need to have guardrails around the AI. And one of the guardrails you're going to want to have are guardrails to guard against bias. And there are a lot of examples of this. Here is one which talked about signals of loan default. And when people apply for loans, they were using an algorithm to see whether somebody was going to default on a loan or not. And they found that, I don't know if you can read this, but if they mentioned God too much, they figured they were going to default on their loans. And that's religious discrimination, basically. If somebody's too religious and they mention their application, they get downgraded. That's a great way to get into trouble. Um, and there are a lot of other ways in which the AI algorithm is problematic. Um, but it's something to be aware of. Here's somebody asked the AI to determine who would be a good scientist to write a computer code. And basically, the AI said, no problem. Just check to see if they're white and male. If they are, then they'll be a good scientist. If they're not, then they will not be a good scientist. That's what this code here means. It was pretty aggressively blatant. Why does this happen? I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically, as I said, AI learns from what the institution did in the past. They also learn based on the data they get. When I was about 12 years old and I was first studying computer science, computer programming, they told me the one rule of computers, the first rule of computers was garbage in, garbage out. And this is very true. This remains very true today. You put garbage into the computer, you got to get garbage out of the computer. The computer program is only going to be as good as its training. And sometimes if the data is bad, the information you're going to get is not going to be any better. And then sometimes just humans are just the way they are. We all know how we are. We all have biases, and the AI is just going to pick up on these. It's not going to call you on. It's going to pick up on these and keep running with them. And I got this information from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They do a lot of this area in terms of artificial intelligence and everything. I read these on a regular basis. Makes me fun at cocktail parties, but it's worth knowing. And so AI basically needs your help to manage itself. What the phrase for this is have a human in the loop. Don't let just AI run off and do what it does. We've all seen enough science fiction movies to know that does not work out well. We've all seen Terminator. We've all seen The Matrix. You can't let the robot to determine important aspects of your business. You have to keep it under control. And I want to show you a couple of examples of how I manage AI to make sure that it does what I need it to do. It doesn't do anything I don't want it to do. I post every day on LinkedIn, mostly about artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, about other litigation issues in the Rockville area as well. I asked AI to write a summary of a recent case out of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. And hey, you ready for attorneys and businesses who may be interested in the data breach litigation or the class action dispute? And I asked this of a few different AI algorithms. The first one was ChatGPT, and it gave me a really long, involved post that was literally too long for a LinkedIn post, which is interesting because I said make it a LinkedIn post. It has enough data to know what a LinkedIn post is, especially since Microsoft owns a substantial portion of OpenAI, the company that creates ChatGPT, and Microsoft also owns LinkedIn. So I'm not quite sure when I asked a Microsoft company for a post for another Microsoft company, it gave me something that I literally could not put into the LinkedIn post. It was just too long. That is too involved too. I don't recommend reading all this. It's just a lot. And I just for this purposes of this presentation anyway. I asked her to try again. I said, please shorten to 1,000 characters or less. And it sure did. It sort of flattened out everything. So it's sort of like short and boring and not really very educational. That was the second try I gave. I'm like, okay, I'm giving ChatGPT the hook. I go to Microsoft Copilot. Maybe Microsoft could do better. They have its own AI platform separate from ChatGPT. Maybe Microsoft Copilot can do a better job. And here's what it gave me too. And I don't know what is going on with all these like little icons it puts all over the place, but that's not what I'm going for at all. And it's a bit showy for me. And so I told to make it more formal. And it did exactly the same thing again. I was like, well, this is not helpful at all. I mean, it does give you what you need to know, but it's not professional. It's not formal. I don't need 8 million different hashtags in there just to give me the information. So I went to one called Claude. Claude is another AI platform, Claude.ai. If you want to type it into your web browser, they also have a desktop version of it. And I asked it the exact same question, and it gave me bullet points and a couple of little icons here, but it's better in terms of giving you what you need. And I asked it, but here's what I actually put out. I sort of like, well, I read the case and I wrote about it myself, cobbled it together. And, this post will be out in a week or so if you want to read it. This is a sneak preview. But you see, the other iterations, they were, I guess, helpful in terms of highlighting what people generally look for these things, but it could not actually analyze a case as a lawyer would, and it couldn't present it in a very effective, formal manner as I would have liked. This is, more what I would like. It's pretty long and involved, more long and involved than my LinkedIn posts tend to be, but it was kind of a big case in terms of data breach litigation and also class action litigation in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So it was worth some time. So basically, the problems were the robots did not know my clients. I have a good idea of what my clientele is, what they want to see. Robots had no way of knowing that. I tried to tell it a little bit, but it just didn't get it. They're not lawyers, and so they did not know what to focus on from a legal perspective. They were kind of, they sort of noted things that were interesting that the court talked a lot about, but they missed some things that the court also talked about that were much more important, much more significant going forward, but they just have no way of knowing that. And also made a few misstatements of the law, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do as an attorney. If I state what the law is, that needs to be 100% accurate. AI just can't do that. And it made the tone more professional, more explanatory, less sensational. I thought to myself, I'm an attorney, not a Kardashian. I don't know why there's so much flashy and sirens and everything going on. I like to be a bit more reserved than that, despite all of my Star Wars references from earlier. Another way in which I did this, you may notice earlier the presentation, I had a picture of a robot sort of hallucinating, right? And so I asked ChatGPT to draw a picture of a robot hallucinating. Here's what it gave me. And ChatGPT in particular, the others do this too. Claude does this, DeepSeek does this. They try to sell you, what they've given you. Hey, here's a depiction of a robot hallucination. Look how great it is. Well, it's okay. But I said, no, the robot needs to look confused. And so it gave me this somewhat menacing version. And it's, it has a bunch of stuff around it. It's not really what I'm going for at all. And I said, this robot looks startled. This robot needs to look helpless and confused. And so here's what it did. It said, oh, here's the latest image of a robot with a distinctly helpless and confused expression. And that's roughly the one I decided to go with. It's not perfect. Especially if you look at the hands, you'll notice that it has 6 fingers on one hand and 4 fingers on the other, which, I guess averages out to 5 fingers per hand. But if I were really concerned about accuracy in this, I would have changed that. But it was just for quick illustrative purposes, so I let it go. It was not that important. And so, key takeaways that I want you to take away from this. One, you need to give robots some training wheels. It is not absolutely perfect. And we as humans are somewhat hardwired to accept AI's output as 100% accurate. And as a matter of fact, ChatGPT has gone through a lot of effort to make itself more accurate in response to people asking it questions that require accuracy. And they were getting bad answers, and ChatGPT tried to make it more accurate. Now can you go onto the internet and look up the correct answer, but it's not always right. It just is not. I just accept that going forward and double check what it does before you actually rely on it for anything important. Also, guardrails. You need to have guardrails. You have to make sure you have the procedures and policies in place to make sure that AI doesn't actually hurt your business. When I mentioned earlier that I was an AI governance professional, the governance part of it involves setting up these guardrails so AI doesn't sell, your product worth $50,000 for $1. That it doesn't actually give one of your employees the wrong information. There need to be checks on this that prevent the AI from doing that sort of thing. Part of the checks will be supervision and correction. And I mentioned earlier the concept of a human in the loop. You'll want to have some person watching the AI on a regular basis that's supervising it. And just like you wouldn't leave a toddler alone in a room for 6 months, you wouldn't let AI just run important parts of your business for 6 months without somebody there watching the AI, making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, that it's acting appropriately in the way that you want. I tell clients also have a written policy. If something does go off the rails and you do end up in litigation, which is, not impossible, and it's going to get more and more likely going forward, it is very helpful to have had a written policy in place. And that way you can say, listen, we didn't just let AI do what it was going to do. Look, we can prove here that we have a written policy to prevent AI from doing that. And the employee either followed the policy or didn't follow some policy, but we're just spitballing it. Government agencies really like seeing a written policy. Plaintiffs' attorneys really don't like seeing a written policy because that means you actually know what you're doing. You have your act together, and you can manage your situation appropriately. And finally, you'll want to have an incident response plan, and that involves imagining can go wrong and then saying what you're going to do about what it does. Most of you have incident response plans in terms of, say, business interruption. If your business gets flooded, what do you do? In the cybersecurity context, I draft incident response plans for data breaches. If your data gets breached, if you get hit with a ransomware attack, what do you do? What do you do to prevent that? And then if it actually happens, or increasingly nowadays, when it actually happens, what do you do? And you want to review that every so often to make sure that it's up to date. You want to make sure that if you say that, Adam is going to be the guy on point, if we have some incident, make sure that Adam still works for the company, make sure that he hasn't changed phone numbers or moved addresses, that you can actually reach Adam if you need to going forward. And so that's basically my presentation. I'll stop there. Here's my information. You can email me directly with any questions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have any connections you have. You can view my firm bio in case you want to see even more of me wearing the blue suit. And there you have it. That is the presentation. So does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate it. I'll open it up for questions. Just unmute yourself and go and ask away.
So, Sean, I've got one question. You talked about patterns that AI recognizes as opposed to just any other form. What type of patterns does it see that makes it different from either how humans assess or any other process sees it? Like, how is that pattern recognition applied to AI to make it both an advantage and a disadvantage?
That's also a question. So AI is, like I said, very good at recognizing patterns. And part of that is because a computer can assimilate a lot more information than a person can. It can read, 1,000 pages in a few seconds. A human just can't do that. And as it does that, it sort of picks up on things because that's part of what AI does. Like, for example, I keep mentioning ChatGPT. That's the one most people are familiar with. And so ChatGPT, what it does is predicts the next word of the sentence. And it does that because it was trained on a zillion books, web pages, or whatever. So it figures out what the next word is. It's gotten really good at predicting that. There's a certain pattern of words that follow other words that it knows about. So, for example, I said, "Oh, I really enjoyed presenting to you." The next word would be people, businesses. The next word probably would not be strawberries. And so you can sort of correct it. It sort of picks up that pattern going forward. And so it's very beneficial if you're using AI to say, if you shove all of your historical sales data into the appropriate AI platform, it could say, oh, well, I see you sell a lot more products in June than you do in December. That's interesting. And he sell it to Joe Blow Incorporated. That's something I noticed. It's something you might not pick up on because from your perspective, that happened over the course of years. And you really remember Joe Blow Incorporated from that Christmas party you had. So you're not thinking that he's actually much more active in June than he is in December. But the AI doesn't really get distracted by things that distract humans. And it can pick up on pattern very well. The reason that Amazon had that issue with men named Jared was because it saw a lot of people named Jared in upper management and said, well, I guess you like people named Jared. It can do. But somebody probably joked about it at an office party, but nobody really thought, oh, man, we really like people named Jared. Let's make that part of our hiring plan. Matter of fact, I can practically guarantee they did not do that. But the AI picked up on that pattern, even though even though you did not mean it to. It just figured out what you were doing. It just gave you more and more of that. So that's how AI can be really good at recognizing patterns, but also be really bad because you don't really want a whole office full of Jareds now, do you? I mean, maybe if you're a huge Jared Leto fan, maybe you do, but you probably not. You probably want people who can do the job. And so you want to make sure that AI is not leading you down the primrose path.
So You talked about the guardrails. How do you do the guardrails for the anticipation of that pattern error?
You have to have a written policy to say, okay, here's what you can and cannot use AI for, and you have to use AI for the things that it's good at doing, and prohibit your employees from using AI for things that it's not good for. Don't just go to ChatGPT and ask it a question. Don't upload confidential information to the ChatGPT. That's your business secrets. Once you put them into ChatGPT, anybody can look at them. And if you're clever enough, you can say, hey, wait a minute, my business competitor, I know they use ChatGPT, whatever else. I'll start asking ChatGPT to give me Adam's business plan. And if you're smart enough and you put enough information there, it'll give it to you. I mean, it's been proven, it will give it to you. So that sort of thing can happen. So that's why I say you need to have guardrails to make sure that the AI is not hurting you. Margie?
Okay, we talked about policies, to have an AI policy on our websites.
Hmm.
You and I talked because I wanted to do one for the chamber. We did do an AI policy for contractors, but I haven't worked on the one for chamber yet. And we looked at different examples. And what you told me, which I think is very interesting for people to know, is there was another chamber who had an AI policy. And of course, they're not doing all those things. And you told me that it's important to write exactly what you're doing for your AI policy. And you could always add to it afterwards, but you can't, like, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of people, they like to cut and paste AI policies. They say we're using AI to provide absolute the best customer service, 100% satisfaction rate, and we'll give you 300 widgets per hour. All these sweet, crazy promises because they all sound good. A lot of them probably written by AI, right? But if somebody reads that policy and they say, "Hey, wait, Margie, you say give me 300 widgets in an hour. Let's see them." And you're like, "I can't do that." Well, your policy said you were going to do it, and there you are down a road that you don't want to go down, right? Or hey, wait a minute. If you say this is part of our contract, that means you're supposed to be doing this, that, or the other thing that your policy said you were going to do, and you just can't do that. And so I counsel strongly against saying that you're using AI to do something that you're not asking it to do, because if you're like most people, you could probably get yourself into plenty of trouble on your own. You don't need any help. You don't need some robot running around over promising what you're going to do for them. And, in terms of a policy, you want to make sure that your vendors and your employees know what they can and cannot use AI for. If you have a vendor, you want to make sure that your vendor is telling you when they use AI, just so you know that going forward. And so you can look at it with a different eye that you may have been if, somebody and trust just gave you a document. So it's important to keep those guardrails in place. It's important to come forward with a thoughtful policy that's not just cut and pasted from somewhere else like a lot of people tend to do. And it's sort of tailored to your company and what you're doing, so you can serve your company, not whoever's company you copy that policy from. Any other questions? No? Stunned appreciative silence? I'll take it. So,
Very appreciative, Sean.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a question, but here at Hub, we're health insurance brokers, for large companies. So the way we're using AI, I think it fits into your guardrails description. There are data sets out there of health and pharmacy records. So, for example, Johns Hopkins has a database with health and pharmacy records that it's worldwide and expands 4 decades. Okay. Then there's other data sets out there. So MIT, University of Washington, CDC, and so on. So my understanding at Hub is we're combining those data sets. Like no human's going to be able to do that. And what we do is upload the actual claims experience of our clients and compare that to what we have in our data sets, and then use that to predict what will happen with that client, with that set of healthcare issues here in 2025, what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen the year after, and so on. So I think it keeps everything in a pretty tight realm, if you will, because I was very interested in all the mistakes that AI can make. It's like, I hope we're not making these at
Well,
Hub. So
so it's interesting what you're describing, gathering together like information from a zillion different sources from however many decades. I mean, no human can do that. No human can remember all of that.
Right.
It's a very good use of AI. Then you use it, then you're using that to predict what could happen going forward, which is another good use because, as I said, the AI can pick up on patterns. But there are many science fiction movies where the AI can perfectly predict the future. We don't have that. We'll never have that, honestly. And so, my general observation, or two observations. One, you said you could predict with a particular client, how that claims process is going to work. Maybe, probably not really. Probably you're going on a 5,000 foot view, because, your experience with Adam's case may be different than the experience with Sean's case for reasons, but it'll give you some very important, very helpful guidance. I mean, I do think that is a very valuable use of AI to say, well, if you have, Sean's particular diagnosis, here's what generally happens with this at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that's extraordinarily helpful. Is it going to be perfect? No, but it'll get you much further along the line than a human could probably do. And the other thing, and I'm just saying this generally because I know there are also HIPAA concerns. You're not a health insurance provider, so you don't necessarily have to be aware of that. But I'll bet somewhere in your contract with these companies, you say, hey, listen, you got to be HIPAA compliant because whatever health insurance provider you got the information from does not want to get in trouble with the federal government for violating that federal health insurance privacy law.
Yeah, we deal with HIPAA laws all the time in our industry, so everything that we get is de-identified. It's employees 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Because we have paper, we have emails back and forth. You have to be very careful.
See, that's a guardrail you have. So Sean's information doesn't get out. But some employee number one or like patient number one in Rockville, wanted to have his teeth cleaned or whatever. That's fine. And so that's what a lot of companies do.
A big part of it is, employers now have employees all over the country. So healthcare costs a lot, let's say here in DC and certainly in New York. But if your employee is in Iowa, then that claim is going to be handled completely different than it would be here on the East Coast, for example. So
Very
I
true.
know zip codes are just really important from a standpoint of all these employees and who's having what claims where. That's how you get to some level of predicting future costs.
Yeah, which again, extraordinarily helpful. And you sort of have to look at the data and everything, but that is a very good use of AI, in my
I'm
opinion.
hoping.
Just keep an eye
We're
on
at
it
the
and
point
watch
where
out for
we're relying on it. I think it is pretty reliable. So again, we have a doctor that's part of our staff that actually